Welcome to Learn English podcast. China versus Trump's trade war. Learn English through story. Hello everyone. Whether you're just starting to learn English or you're looking to improve your speaking skills, you've come to the right place. Before we start this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel to get daily videos, and I don't want you to miss any of our lessons. Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey. Introduction. Imagine two very large and important countries in the world. These countries are the United States and China. For many years they bought and sold huge amounts of goods to each other. This is called trade. But a few years ago they started to have a big disagreement about this trade. This argument was different because it was not fought with soldiers or weapons. Instead, it was fought using money and special trade rules. The main tools used in this disagreement were special taxes called tariffs. The government of the United States, led by President Trump at that time, decided to put these new taxes on many different goods that came into the country from China. When a country puts a tariff on a product, it makes that product more expensive for people in that country to buy. The United States hoped these tariffs would change the trade relationship with China. However, China did not agree with these actions. In response, the Chinese government put its own new tariffs on many goods coming from the United States. For example, certain farm products grown in America became more expensive for people in China. This situation, where countries put tariffs on each other's goods, is often called a trade war. This trade argument became quite serious and lasted for some time. Both the United States and China added more tariffs, affecting a wider range of products. This had effects on many businesses and ordinary people. Companies that needed parts from the other country saw their costs increase. Some American farmers found it much harder to sell their products, like soybeans, to China. Shoppers in the United States may have noticed that the prices of some items in stores went up. Because the United States and China have two of the biggest economies globally, making up about 40% of the world's economy together, their disagreement affected many other countries too. Global trade patterns started to change. In the chapters that follow, we will look much more closely at this important trade argument. We will explain simply what tariffs are and exactly how they work. We will explore the main reasons the United States government gave for starting to use these tariffs against China. We will also examine how China reacted and the reasons behind its actions. Our goal is to understand the different effects these tariffs had on the amount of trade, on businesses both big and small, and on the jobs and daily lives of people in both countries. We will also touch upon the discussions between the two nations as they tried to solve the issues. This story aims to provide a clear and balanced picture of what happened, looking at the situation from different angles in a neutral way without taking. 2. What are tariffs? Imagine you want to buy something like a toy car or a shirt that was made in another country. Sometimes when these goods arrive in your country, the government adds an extra cost to them. This extra cost is called a tariff. Tariff is a special kind of tax. Governments put this tax on goods that are imported. Imported goods are things made in one country and then brought into another country to be sold. These goods can be anything people buy, like food, clothes, electronics, or cars. How do tariffs work? They make imported goods more expensive. When a country puts a tariff on a product, for example, shoes from another country, the price of those shoes usually goes up. The company that brings the goods into the country, called the importer, usually pays the tariff first. Then the importer often adds this cost to the price when selling the shoes to shops, so the final price for shoppers becomes higher. This means imported shoes might cost more than shoes made in the home country. Countries use tariffs for several reasons. One main reason is to help their own companies and workers. If goods from other countries become more expensive because of tariffs, people might choose to buy goods made in their own country instead. This can help local businesses sell more products and keep people employed. Another reason is for the government to collect money. Tariffs are a tax, and the money collected goes to the government. The government can use this money to pay for public services such as building roads or schools. Sometimes tariffs are used as a tool in disagreements between countries. A government might put tariffs on goods from another country to show it is unhappy about something. It might be used to pressure the other country to change its trade rules or policies. For example, a country might add a tariff to cars from another country if it feels the trade is not fair. There are different ways to calculate tariffs. 1. Common way is based on the value of the goods. This is called a percentage tariff. For example, a tariff might be 10% of the price of an imported bicycle. If the bicycle costs $100, the tariff would be $10. Sometimes these percentage tariffs can be quite high, like 50%, or even more than 100%. Another way is a fixed amount for each item. This means the same amount of tax is paid for each piece, no matter its price. For example, there could be a tariff of $2 for every imported T-shirt. So tariffs are taxes on goods from other countries. They can change the prices of things we buy and affect how countries trade with each other. Understanding tariffs helps us understand why they are sometimes used and how they impact businesses and people. 3. Why Trump used tariffs. The government of the United States, led by President Trump, decided to put special taxes, called tariffs, on many goods coming from China. There were several main reasons given for this decision. One big reason was the trade balance between the two countries. This means how much each country buys from the other. For many years, the United States bought much more from China than China bought from the United States. The U.S. government was worried about this difference. They wanted trade to be more equal between the two large countries. Another important reason involved worries about China's trade practices. The U.S. government said China was not playing fair in trade. They were concerned about American companies' ideas and inventions, called intellectual property. The government felt that China took these ideas without permission or payment. There were also concerns that it was hard for American companies to sell their products in China. They felt the rules in China made it difficult for foreign companies to compete fairly. Some people believed China needed to follow the same trade rules as other countries. A major goal of using tariffs was to help American businesses and workers. By making goods from China more expensive, the government hoped that people and companies in America would buy more things made in the U.S. The idea was to encourage manufacturing inside the United States. This could mean bringing factories and jobs back to the country. The government hoped this would make the American economy stronger. Finally, the tariffs were seen as a tool to make China talk and agree to changes. The U.S. wanted China to change its rules and how it behaved in international trade. The tariffs put pressure on China. It was a way to push China towards making a new trade agreement with the United States. The U.S. hoped that facing these extra taxes would make China ready to negotiate different trade rules. These tariffs were part of a plan that some people said also included other changes, like cutting taxes for Americans or changing rules for businesses to help the U.S. economy grow. 4. China's answer to tariffs. When the United States put special taxes called tariffs on goods from China, China did not stay quiet. It decided to answer back. The Chinese government announced its own plan. China put new higher tariffs on goods coming from the United States. This meant that American products became more expensive to buy in China. Many different types of American goods were affected by these Chinese tariffs. For example, farm goods from the U.S. faced these new taxes. This made it harder for American farmers to sell things like soybeans or pork to China. These were important products that the U.S. sold a lot of to China before the disagreement started. The Chinese government also spoke about the situation. They explained their reasons for adding their own tariffs. China's leader, President Xi Jinping, talked about the trade argument. He said that in a trade war like this, there are no winners. He also said that China had grown strong over many years through its own hard work and self-reliance. He added that China was not afraid of unfair pressure. China felt that the American tariffs were not fair. Some in China said the U.S. tariffs were so high that they did not make sense anymore. They believed the U.S. actions were meant to harm China's economy. The Chinese government stated that if the U.S. continued to add more tariffs, China was ready to keep responding. They said they would stand strong and protect their country's interests. At the same time, China also let people know it was still ready to talk. The part of the government that handles trade said they were open to discussions with the U.S. to try and solve the problems. However, the situation was difficult. Because of the new Chinese tariffs, some people thought Chinese companies might start buying goods like farm products from other countries instead of the U.S. This could change who China traded with. So China's answer to the U.S. tariffs was strong. It used its own tariffs on American goods and made clear statements about its position. China showed it would defend itself in the trade disagreement, but it also left the door open for talk. 5. How tariffs changed trade. The special taxes, called tariffs, created big changes in trade between the United States and China. Goods moving between the two countries became much more expensive. For example, tariffs on some Chinese products coming to the U.S. were very high, sometimes making items like phones, toys, or clothes cost almost double the original price. This made it harder for the U.S. and China to trade the same amount of goods as they did before. The flow of trade between them was disrupted. Companies had to make new plans. When products from China became so costly in the U.S., many American businesses started looking for other countries to buy from. They searched for places where they would not face these high taxes. Also, companies thought hard about where they made their products. Some considered moving their factories out of China. The idea was maybe to bring manufacturing back to the United States, which is called reshoring. Another idea was to move factories to countries that had better relationships with the U.S., sometimes called friends-whoring. The tariffs were a big reason for businesses to rethink their global production plans. These changes affected more than just the US and China. Other countries around the world noticed the impact. For instance, China needed goods like soybeans. If US soybeans became too expensive due to tariffs, China might buy them from Brazil or Argentina instead. These other countries could then earn more money. With this extra money, they might buy more goods from China, replacing the U.S. customers. So trade routes began to shift. It was not just a U.S.-China issue. It involved many nations. Reports said that over 70 countries contacted the U.S. government to discuss the tariffs and negotiate. This showed how widespread the effects were. Some observers felt China became more isolated in trade matters, as countries tried to make deals with the U.S. to avoid tariffs. There were concerns about the impact on the whole world's trade system. The United States and China are huge economies, making up about 40% of the world's total economic activity. A trade argument between them could potentially slow down global trade for everyone. The complex networks used to make and move goods around. The world called supply chains also started changing. Companies realized that depending too much on one single country for parts or manufacturing could cause problems if tariffs suddenly appeared. So they began exploring ways to make their supply chains more secure, perhaps by using suppliers in several different countries. The tariffs encouraged a big rethink of how international business and trade operated. Effects on people and jobs. The tariffs changed things for many people in the United States and China. One big effect was on prices. When the U.S. put tariffs on goods from China, things like mobile phones, toys, games, and clothes became more expensive for shoppers in American stores. Some prices went up a lot. This made some people worry about inflation, which is when prices for many things rise over time. American businesses also felt the effects in different ways. Companies that needed to buy parts or materials from China found that their costs went up. This made it harder for them to make and sell their products at a good price. For other American companies, the tariffs maybe offered a chance. Because Chinese goods were more expensive, some U.S. companies faced less competition. However, the tariffs also created uncertainty, making it difficult for businesses to plan for the future. The situation for jobs in the U.S. was complicated. Some industries might have lost jobs. For example, if a company had to pay more for parts because of tariffs, it might not have been able to keep all its workers. On the other side, some hoped the tariffs would bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. The idea was to make American-made goods cheaper compared to taxed Chinese goods. It is not clear if this created many new jobs quickly. Certain areas, like farming, faced problems because China put its own tariffs on American farm goods. In China, businesses and workers also faced challenges. Companies that sold a lot of goods to the U.S. found it harder because the tariffs made their products more expensive for Americans to buy. This could mean less work for people in Chinese factories that made these export goods. The Chinese economy also saw some changes, like people having a bit less money to spend. Overall, the tariffs had wide effects, touching the lives of ordinary people, workers, and company owners in both countries. These changes showed how connected the economies of the two large countries were. The US and China tried to talk about the trade problems, but finding answers was difficult. Both sides had strong ideas about trade. Sometimes the argument became bigger. China increased its tariffs on US goods. The US government also kept its tariffs on Chinese goods. Leaders from both countries made statements. China's leader said that trade wars are bad for everyone. He said China was strong and not afraid. US officials said China did not trade fairly. They said China needed to change its ways. There were times when talks seemed possible. China said it was ready to talk, but it was hard for them to agree. The situation changed over time. Sometimes it looked like things might get better. Other times the problems seemed worse. Some people in the US wanted even higher tariffs on Chinese goods. They thought this would make China change. Other people worried about this idea. They thought high tariffs could hurt the US economy too, by making prices higher for shoppers. For example, prices for things like phones or toys could go up. The tariffs from the Trump government continued for some time. Even when a new president, Joe Biden, came, some tariffs stayed. This showed that the problems between the US and China were not easy to fix. Both governments felt China needed to trade more fairly. Some ideas were discussed, like a smaller fixed tariff for all countries. Maybe a 10% tariff could be more stable. During this time, many other countries started talking to the US about trade. Reports said more than 70 countries wanted to negotiate with the US. This might have made China feel more alone in the trade argument. The goal of the US tariffs was not always clear. Some said the goal was to bring factories back to America. Others said it was to make China follow trade rules, or maybe it was just to show strength. The talks and changes showed how complex the trade relationship was. Finding a solution that made everyone happy was very hard. The disagreements continued, and it was not clear how they would end. The process of talking and negotiating went on, sometimes quietly, sometimes with big news. Both countries watched each other closely, trying to decide what to do next. 8. What happens next? The trade argument between the United States and China involved special taxes called tariffs. These tariffs made buying goods from the other country more expensive. Both countries put tariffs on many different products. This created a difficult situation for businesses and people in both the US and China, and also affected other countries around the world. Many things changed because of this trade disagreement. So, what is the situation now, and what might happen in the future? The talks between the US and China led to some agreements, but not all the problems went away. Some tariffs are still in place today. The two countries still disagree about some important issues. These include the trade balance, how much each country buys from the other, and rules about things like technology and fair competition. The tariffs. caused big changes in global trade. Some companies moved their production away from China to other countries to avoid the extra taxes. This shift might continue. It means that supply chains, the path goods take from the factory to the customer, might look different in the future. Some people think the US should try to make more things at home or in countries that are friendly to the US. Others point out that China is a very large market with over 1 billion people, making it important for many international companies. Will the US and China cooperate more or compete more strongly in the coming years? This is a big question. Their relationship affects the whole world economy. Some experts worry that disagreements could continue, making trade difficult. Others hope that the two countries can find ways to work together on shared problems. The tariffs showed that trade can be used as a tool in disagreements, and this might happen again. People still have different opinions about the effects of the tariffs. Some believe they were needed to make trade fairer or to protect jobs and industries in the US. They might point to China needing to follow global trade rules. Others focus on the negative results, like higher prices for shoppers or problems for businesses that depend on trade. They might say that trade arguments hurt everyone involved. The discussion about the best way to trade with China continues. The long-term results of the tariff argument are still becoming clear. The relationship between these two powerful countries will remain very important for global trade and politics for many years. Thank you for joining me in today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming lessons. Keep practicing, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next lesson.